Greg, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Cloud.
Yeah, so we really crunch numbers. Expected goals this, expected goals conceded. What to expect when you're expecting in our review in our game week one review. But now it's about looking at game week two. I mean, can you believe we're talking about game week two? We spent like 6 weeks or whatever it is talking about game week one or building up to game week one, and now already game week two has snuck up upon us. Eh?
I know I've got about 30 drafts that I have to just delete off my phone and delete off my computer
Make your
because they
phone go
just
faster.
they just mean nothing at this point. So it's all about the team that I have and what's going to happen in game week 2.
Yeah, awesome, man. And we, like I said, we went in quite comprehensively in crunching the numbers in our game week one review. But now it's time to look forward. So the first game that we're going to kick off with, obviously, is the early kickoff on Saturday, which is Liverpool and Burnley. Now, we've touched on a little bit the fact that Salah is still the best captaincy option going into the game week. So you're still sticking to that based on what you're seeing so far?
Yeah, I mean, I've updated my model with the latest data, and I think Liverpool, I mean, City come in first in terms of goals that should be scored for game week 2. But I think the problem with City is you just don't have a player that you can really nail on for 90 minutes. You don't have a player that's in form after game week 1. I think you'd be crazy not to just go with Captain Salah, and they're very closely in second place in terms of goals projected for game week 2, and I think Burnley at home is the fixture to go for.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few people, especially on social media, saying that Salah actually only has one goal in 7 games against Burnley, which I actually didn't even know. And but now that I think of it, it makes sense. The Burnley games have seemed to be like scrappy ones at times. I remember, I think it was Ragnar Klavan who scored an injury time goal a few years back against Burnley as well. So that was quite an interesting one. But I think Milner scored once, Keita scored some. The goals have been quite spread around when it comes to the Burnley fixtures specifically. Yeah.
Liverpool historically don't seem to have done well against them, but I would discount that massively. I think you've got to just look at the fact that it's probably one of the best fixtures for the game week. You've got a guy who's 2 assists and a goal in the game week before. He's going to play 90 minutes. I mean, what more do you want? To say that because of every single time Liverpool play Burnley, it's a scrappy fixture. I don't think you can expect that going into game week 2. I think you've just got to go look at the numbers and go with the numbers.
Yeah. No, definitely. Like I've tried not to overthink it too much as well. I looked at it and I said, look, you know what? It's Liverpool playing Burnley at home. Let's not think too much about this over here. Just captain Salah and go for it, And as far as Burnley are concerned, I know usually we've been reluctant to kind of maybe captain players against them unless it was a City player, because they always score heavily against Burnley. But Burnley were the type of team where even if they lose, they traditionally like concede that heavily. But we did speak about it, as like I said, in the preview show, where the defensive numbers have dipped off a little bit. Do you see them becoming one of those teams where you look to target captaincy against them?
Yeah, I think you've got to just go with basically the quality differential on the teams. If you look at how big a difference there is between Liverpool and Burnley, it's huge. I wouldn't be targeting, Brentford versus Burnley, for instance.
Yeah, no, sure, fair enough.
I think when you've got the big quality teams, when you've got Liverpool, City, United, Spurs, those guys playing against the weaker teams, I think you just those are the teams you want to target. And this isn't for me just an easy one. There's not. I think, like you said, don't overthink it. The reason that you've got these models built and taken all this data into account is just to make your life a little bit easier and just stick with what it spits out.
And I suppose ultimately it's not an exact science, but you're playing the percentages game here, and you need to look at what your best odds are, and the odds are that Liverpool win this game, and Salah is a good captaincy option. So, yeah, definitely. And the one thing I need to speak about now is that so many of us have went in heavily on Tsimikas. He kept the clean sheet, and now he's even 4.1 million. And now I see pictures just a short while ago of Andy Robertson running outside again, which becomes a little bit of a problem because
don't be too alarmed, people. I think everyone's seen those pictures and started panicking, but you've got to remember that he's damaged the ligaments in his ankle.
Yeah,
and
you need some time.
And the thing that you need to remember is that you can start running quite early on with that in a straight line. That's not the issue. It's changing direction. It's going from a dead stop to sprinting as quickly as possible. There are a lot of other things that he needs to do before he's even close to being ready. And there's not a chance in the world, that, in my opinion, that he'll be ready for game week 2. And if you're a Tsimikas owner, that was the first prize anyway, getting two game weeks with a 4.0 defender. So I think you'll still pretty much guaranteed to start from him on the weekend.
Yeah,
and then game week 3 is Chelsea, and if he doesn't play against Chelsea, I promise you it's not the end of the world. But I still think he's got a fairly good chance of even playing the Chelsea game.
And he played really well against Norwich. I think he was, when I looked at him, it's like, yes, Robertson has been amazing. But the way Tsimikas played, I think, obviously, okay, it was Norwich, so not to be disrespectful to them, but he did really well. He looked really... I think as he's... because maybe he looks off the pace a bit fitness-wise, around the 70-80 minute mark, we saw a few lapses of concentration, but I expect that to get a little bit better as his stamina grows as well. But yeah, I think I'm not, like you said, no need to panic about him at the moment.
No, and I was surprised at how far forward he was getting. He looked Robertson-esque
and taking set pieces.
He was taking corners. Yeah. He was taking corners. He was higher than Trent most of the game. He really looked good. So I think, I had him over Jota as my third Liverpool player, and I'm not regretting that decision at all. I think for 4 million to get me 6 points, very, very happy. And I would hang on to him, and hopefully he plays the next 2 game weeks.
Yeah. I used it was on the Thursday night, the night before the deadline, last week Thursday, where I decided, okay, you know what, Tsimikas is a gift in FPL. This opportunity does not come around that often.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Yeah, and by having him in my team, it means that, either like initially I had Ivan Toney in my forward line, but I took out Toney, Jota, and my other 4 million bench fodder, which I think was Javier Manquillo, and I put in Tsimikas as a playing defender, because I felt like if you're going to bring him in, you have to play him. It's no point keeping him on the bench.
Exactly.
And so Ben White became my backup, but it also meant that if I wanted, it essentially acted as an enabler for me to go with Salah, Bruno, and Son, which paid off at least for game week 1. And but it also meant that I had to downgrade someone like Dunk to Veltman, who didn't play last week.
But I think that was unlucky. I think Veltman had to self-isolate because of COVID, and there's, with COVID around, that's always going to happen where you get a bit unlucky and a player might be affected. I think that's just pure bad luck. But I think, like you said, it's an absolute gift at 4 million. And the nice thing is that, like you say, with a guy like Ben White on your bench, if Tsimikas can get 3 game weeks of games, you've got no transfers for 7 game weeks in your defense.
Yeah,
and that just makes your life so much easier, because now you're only worried about what midfielders are going to get changed, who's on form, how do the fixtures look. It really takes a lot of headaches away when you don't have to plan defensive transfers.
Yeah, definitely. So that's why I figured, initially I was like, no, don't jump onto the Tsimikas bandwagon. don't jump on. And then eventually I was like, no, you know what? I need to be flexible in my thinking over here. Initially, I decided to put Mahrez in my team, but then I had this nagging doubt that, okay, what if somebody like Milner starts at left back? And if Mahrez doesn't play, then I have two players, who are not playing, and then I only have one sub. So I felt, okay, by having Son in my team, I kind of mitigate that risk. And if I look past the City fixture, which turned out to be bonus points, then at least then I know that Spurs got 3 good fixtures coming up. But yeah, Tsimikas has been a gift that I just couldn't pass up at the moment. And really, like you said, defensive transfers are really set at the moment. You really don't need to worry about it. And I'm not going to. I suppose I've spoken so much about Tsimikas now that I think everybody gets it. But yeah, look, that was an awesome gift for us in FPL. And look, I'm not going to talk about the rest of Liverpool. I think we know what to expect. Salah there again, great captaincy option. If you're Alexander-Arnold, highly owned, expect at least a clean sheet from him over here in this game.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is just be careful. I would be a little bit careful of Jota. I'm not sure that. I think there's a reasonable chance that Firmino starts the game against Burnley, and so if you're going for a captaincy option, I think stick with Salah. I wouldn't be taking a risk on Jota just with minutes. I think even if he does start, I think his minutes will be limited.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that I've noticed about Jota, now that you mention him, is that looking at the expected numbers, it's almost like he's a copy and paste of Salah. The numbers are almost exactly the same. The difference between that, just Salah plays so much more, especially last season with Jota being injured for a long period of time. But if you look at the outputs, it's almost exactly the same. So Jota again at 7.5 is an amazing asset to have. But like you say, with the rotation risk and so on, and you look, I'm sure people were praying that when his number came up at 59 minutes and a few seconds, the fact that he walked off so slowly really meant he had our backs. He got you that 1 point extra that you needed. An
FPL legend, making sure he does the slow walk for your 60 minutes.
It was literally seconds that he walked off. So that was quite. I don't have Jota, but for those who do have him, well done. I'm sure that you'll be really, really quite pleased with that one. So so that wraps up the Liverpool-Burnley fixture. Now, the next one up is Aston Villa and Newcastle. So Newcastle seem to be the one whose defense is so poor at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's not even just like poor defense. I think that the game was just wide open against West Ham, and I think I expect a very similar game against Villa. I think there'll be goals in it. I think it'll be a wide open game, and I think that's. For me, the players that you want to target would be Wilson from Newcastle. I think Ings from Villa, and Watkins hopefully coming back as well. And from the comments that Dean Smith made after the first week, I think Watkins is going to be a pivotal role in that Villa team. I'm actually very excited to have him in my team. I think that he might be the sort of big differential pick when it comes to game week 2.
Can you see Watkins and Ings playing in the same team?
I think it's very possible that they'll play a 4-4-2 just to accommodate the two, both strikers. It's going to be interesting to see how they play. I do think that Watkins is the main man. I don't think it is Ings, and I think it's purely because of the work rate that Watkins has, and I think we're going to see a lot from him, and it's going to be interesting to watch the game against Newcastle because I think it's going to be end to end again.
Yeah, and look, when you talk about drafts and especially during the preseason, and I saw a lot of people going in, and I don't blame them because the fixtures look so good for Villa early doors, but they were even going triple up on Villa. You had they'll have Watkins, Buendia, and someone like Matt Target in there.
Yeah.
Defensively, what do you make of Villa? going into this fixture?
No, for me it's just an absolute avoid. I think on both sides. I think Villa and Newcastle. I wouldn't be targeting any defenders for sure. I think you just want to go with one attacker. Again, the problem with Villa is that their fixtures from game week 4 are very, very poor. You know, I always had Watkins in as a 3-game week plan. Game week 4 he was always coming out for Jimenez. So I think there's going to be no change to that. I think I've got hopefully 2 good weeks with Watkins, and then he's out of my team. And if you've got 2-3 Villa assets, you're going to be stuck in a very sticky situation when it comes to game week 4.
Yeah, that was one of the things I looked at as well. Like, I saw the fixture and I thought, okay, you know what, doubling up just feels too excessive, because it essentially means you're booking a transfer, guaranteed. Yeah. Whereas, like, let's say if you go with the Watkins or Ings, or even if you just go with Buendia, you know that, okay, if you have a pressing matter in your team to attend to, you can kind of play them through one more game.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you've got just one of them and it's a worst case scenario and you don't want to take a hit,
just keep them.
You can keep them, and that's never a bad idea. You know, if they get 2 points, you know, a hit's basically a -6 if you look at it that way.
Exactly.
So sometimes if you are in distress and your teams and you've got other transfers that are more important, you can just roll them through it. But when you've got 2 or 3 of them, it's just impossible. And that's why, certainly for any team outside of the top 3, I would highly recommend that you don't double up. When it comes to those bad fixtures, you really are in sticky situations.
No, definitely. So now I know we spoke about captaincy and Salah being the main pick, but let's say if you're being extra spicy over here, okay, and you want it to be completely different in left field, because we see that all the time in FPL, right? Yeah. If you wanted to take a punt on someone like Ings versus Newcastle, do you think that there's any justification for it to happen?
It's interesting because my model does show that their attacking fixture is better than United's, even with the Southampton defence in disarray. So
I would have never thought that.
Yeah, it's very slight. They're pretty much neck and neck, but it's interesting. I think that if you were looking for captaincy options, I would be looking towards Villa. Probably before I'd be looking at United, but again, it comes down to form. Ideally, you want a combination of fixture and form. That always gives you the best captaincy option.
I think the reason why I mentioned Ings specifically is because, like Wilson, they're the type of players who can feed off scraps, and because of that over there, especially in games which are wide open, like you look at how Antonio and Ben Rachma, just did so well against Newcastle. Somebody like Ings seems to be that type of player, whereas like Watkins, he just feels like so wasteful at times, whereas Ings seems to be that type of player who can capitalize in those moments. And in fact, I can actually think of last season when Southampton played Newcastle and both Ings and Wilson scored in the same game, and I had them both. So that is the type of thing I'm talking, ironically enough, that I'm talking about over here. So I think that will be an interesting one. I think if you do have like a Watkins and Wilson and Ings and Wilson, I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them return in this fixture.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be a game of goals if I had to pick one.
Yeah, so actually, maybe that will be the one I must just put in my calendar to watch, because especially after the West Ham Newcastle game, which I unfortunately missed. And I feel like, this is one that maybe I don't want to miss out and now watch them go and draw 0-0 somehow. Right?
Yeah, I'm willing to take some bets on a 0-0. I'll offer you some pretty good odds.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then, wow, now this is a riveting fixture. Palace versus Brentford, okay? What do we do over here? What do we make of this fixture?
Quite honestly, I think it's not even look. If you've got Tony, then you're quite happy that he's playing against Palace. But I think other than that, it's just a fixture that I'm certainly not going to be paying much attention to.
And Zaha, by any chance?
Look, Zaha didn't look terrible, but these bottom feeder teams at the moment, at this stage of the season, I think you want to maybe just start watch listing a few of the players that are standing out. but I wouldn't be paying a hell of a lot of attention to that fixture, to be honest.
No, look, I agree with you there, and I think there are so many options at the moment that if you start looking at Crystal Palace and Brentford now, I think then you're trying to be extra different, and I'm fully with you there. I just don't see any reason to be going that extreme at the moment. And then, so here's an interesting one: Leeds and Everton. Now, we've spoken about Everton at length in our preseason one, where we weren't convinced about their fixtures. We spoke about maybe the atmosphere not being great in the stadium, which there were boos at halftime, but Everton came back. And then there's Leeds, who are the entertainers. Now, do you expect some more entertainment over here, or what happens with this particular fixture?
Yeah, I think we're going to see some goals from Leeds. I don't think it's a bad fixture for them at all. I think
goals for Everton.
Everton, it's on my fixture tracker. It's probably a bad defensive. I mean, a bad attacking fixture. I think Leeds at home are a much better defensive team.
Yeah, that is true.
So I would definitely be looking at Leeds assets over Everton assets. Put it that way.
Fair enough, yeah. And I suppose if you do have a Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison in your team, it's not a bad one to just hold on to anyway. Because
I wouldn't be transferring anyone out. On the flip side of that, from Everton, but I would expect that if you're starting to plan to bring some Leeds assets into your team, it's not a bad stage to do it. I think, like we mentioned previously, I think I'm just a little bit worried about that game week 4 for a guy like Rafinha. I'm not sure if he's at this stage. It hasn't been confirmed whether he's going to be able to play or not.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the only thing to keep in mind. But I think if you've got Leeds assets, I think they should give you some decent returns this week.
Yeah, I'm looking for Rafinha to come through for me this week. I think he owes me. After getting a yellow card last week, I think he's due some points now as well. So, and I missed out on all his good points last season as well. So I think it's about time he pays me back.
Yeah, I think just let me know when you sell him, because I know that's the right time to bring him into my team.
Yeah, no, definitely. And now the one that we spoke about it quite a bit during our when we were reviewing Gameweek 1, and now City versus Norwich. Now this looks like a fixture that's absolute gold. If you have a nailed-on player from Manchester City, it just looks like such a great fixture to just captain that player.
It does look juicy. I think the only thing stopping me from captaining Mahrez is just not knowing how certain his minutes are, how long he's going to play for. Even if he starts, the likelihood that he comes off around the 70-minute mark is quite high. Pep is going to rotate the whole season, and it's going to cause us constant headaches. If it wasn't for that and the just absolute rotation nightmare, then I think they would be by far the best fixture. But at the moment, I'm just happy to have a City asset, and hopefully Mahrez gets some goals.
Yeah, and look, I suppose the same sentiment that when I mentioned Ings is that if you really have the appetite for risk, and what's it called, gambler's fallacy, when you believe that you're due a win, then maybe, just maybe, Riyad Mahrez is your captaincy pick. If you have him in your team, just hold on to him. Keep him, and then if you're feeling that little bit extra risky, then put the captaincy on him, and it might just pay off massively.
Yeah, I think if you want to go for a gamble, it's not a bad option. But it's interesting because I think we spoke about that Villa Newcastle game, and I think that's also one for the gamblers. I think I'd be deciding between those two fixtures if I was into risk taking, but I think just going with the best option, most calculated option is like we said, Salah is just a no-brainer.
Yeah, it just ticks all the boxes. Yeah,
exactly.
And then another riveting fixture over here, Brighton and Watford. Now Brightford, the kings of XG, Brighton, who just don't seem to be able to finish off But they did the job. They came back against Burnley, and
Mape scored a goal for a change, which is.
I mean, wow, that is something special, collector's item. Now, what do you make of this fixture here? Because Watford looked quite good against Villa. They look, it wasn't high quality chances. I think we did mention this as well, but they finished it off, and we spoke about Salah, maybe being a little bit lucky when with his finish, because it was a big deflection. But Emmanuel Dennis looked good. Do you think that if let's say, for example, if you really, let's say you don't have the best team, you didn't select well going into game week 1, you have one transfer to make and you can get in Emmanuel Dennis, do you think it's worth it going into the Brighton fixture?
No, I would avoid it. I think that would be a trap that a lot of people fall into. I think for me, the Brighton fixture is actually one of the better defensive fixtures in game week 2. I think they're defensively for this fixture they're third out of all the fixtures. So I think this is a chance for all those people with Sanchez and Veltman and Dunk
to get a clean sheet,
hopefully to get their clean sheet. But yeah, just stats wise, I wouldn't be bringing Watford attackers in. I think if anything, Brighton defenders should be shining in this fixture.
Yeah, and even look, I don't know if you saw the goal that Tarkowski scored against Brighton. The question is, should have it looked like a foul to me. It was from a corner.
Yeah.
And just looking at that over there, okay, maybe I can understand the referees trying to be a bit more lenient or whatever, but I think they kind of maybe went too much the other way in being too lenient. But it looked like a foul in the build-up, and it was it could have been very feasible that Brighton came away with a clean sheet in that game.
Yeah, look, I think Brighton defensively are up there, and their fixtures have, like we spoke about pre-season, their fixtures are pretty decent for their defensive options. So, yeah, I don't think there's too much to go into. I think if you've got Brighton defenders, you shouldn't really be making defensive changes in game week 2 unless your team's a mad mess at the moment. And I don't think you're going to be looking too much at Brighton attackers. So for me, I would avoid the Watford attackers. I would stick with my Brighton defenders, and just pray for that clean sheet.
Yeah, look, I suppose the other option is if you do have a Watford defender, because some people might have put a 4.5 million enabler on their bench. Do you think it's worth throwing them into this fixture for possible clean sheet from both sides, from maybe a 0-0 in this fixture?
Look, I think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's an option for sure, but I think for Watford it's still
an avoid.
It's still an
just
avoid.
Watford.
Avoid where possible. Yeah.
Look, I think that the reason why I keep on bringing up these type of things is because I know many people try to go take a little bit of a risk, be a little bit different, and so they try and punt on newly promoted teams. And I've got burnt with that in the past as well, and I just don't think, especially so early in the season, that we have enough info on them, and that even with so many options, it just doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer a Leeds defender over a Watford defender.
Yeah, definitely, especially because if you look at Leeds fixtures, I think it rotates quite well with Brighton and even with Arsenal as well. So yes. I think between those three teams, you should be fairly covered.
It should be covered, yeah.
Covered, yeah. And then now Sunday fixtures. I know we did briefly touch on this here. Southampton and Manchester United. Probably not another 9-0 again. But, look, Southampton were poor, So what we're expecting out of this game,
Yeah, I think Southampton defense is definitely looking shaky. But at the same time, I don't think we can go into the game expecting another 5 goals from sort of a 1 xg type result, like a 1.4 xg. So United I think are fourth on the list in terms of attacking output for this fixture. So I think if you've got United assets, you're happy with them. I think certainly a lot of people are going to look at Bruno captain. Personally, I think it's possibly a mistake. And I'm hoping that a lot of people do go Bruno so that I can just lock up my Salah captain and and the stats will be with me hopefully.
Because I think we during the Gameweek 1 review we said that what it was like Salah with 2 million captaincies and then Bruno with 800,000. So if that can even out a little bit over there, then it makes it a real contest. It's not so much of a differential anymore. So that should be quite interesting as well. And so, I mean, look, from Southampton, let's be honest, we're not looking at any of their players, right?
It's just a complete avoid at this point,
I don't think, the way it's going for them, I don't think I'll ever consider any of their players throughout the season unless something drastically changes from now till then. So, and, I'm still looking for, again, I spoke about Rafinha getting a yellow card, but in the same game, Luke Shaw got a yellow card as well. Really frustrating, to be losing points. It just feels so unnecessary when you lose points to yellow cards,
Yeah, it is frustrating, but I think Luke Shaw is a good long-term pick, and I think his value will start to come through in the upcoming fixtures.
Yeah, definitely.
I think hopefully we'll see some attacking returns from him in a game like this.
I think he's looking really sharp over the last year or so. He's really fulfilling his potential, and he looks a great pick. Yeah. So and then now I saw a few people who had Jadon Sancho in their teams. And I'm thinking they were really brave, but I suppose you can liken it to people who are really casual players. So I mean I don't blame them, right? But when do you think Sancho will ever come into your thinking?
I think it's going to be tough at the moment. I think he's going to be brought in slowly. The problem is that you've got Pogba and Greenwood in fantastic form. So I think he will. I think he will come into the side, and possibly you'll have a front three of Pogba, Greenwood, and Sancho. But then we've got Rashford coming back from injury. You've got Cavani coming back.
Yeah, they've quite all of well stocked in attack.
Yeah, they're pretty well stocked, and I think for me, if I had Sancho, I'd be looking to possibly downgrade him to Greenwood or look at another option. For the moment, I just don't think that I think you need to wait and see with Sancho before you look at playing him. You want to see that he's getting consistent minutes. You want to see that he's getting returns. It comes back to the old thing of until a player is proven, don't just rush them into your FPL team.
Yeah, especially when it comes to new signings. Like there are specific signings that I look at, especially at, like, let's take for example when Salah moved to Liverpool. I was convinced that he will start from day one, because at the end of it, Liverpool, especially at that time, wouldn't spend big money on a player like him, and it was in a position that we needed. So you almost look at it and think, okay, Salah will start the game. He will start almost every game. It's the same like when Mane came to Liverpool or whatever. So for certain teams, it makes more sense that the player, even if a player is coming in from another league, he'll be almost nailed on. But when it comes to teams like City and Chelsea and United who have these big squads, it becomes very difficult to judge when these players are actually going to play. So yeah, I agree with you. It for me, it's almost like an avoid for now. Yeah. Okay, and then next up is Spurs Nuno returning to Wolves. So now I think we did say that, we mentioned Wolves in passing, that they actually created some decent chances. They had an XG of 1.49, which is not too bad in the grand scheme of things against Leicester, okay? And now they're coming up against Spurs. And now after Spurs got such a great result against City, what do you make of this fixture here, man? You're still thinking, okay, Son's a good one for this fixture?
Yeah, I mean, it's a juicy fixture, I think. Look, I mean, it's not as juicy as some of the others. I think it's in terms of Spurs attacking output, I think it's an average fixture across all the games. But Son is just so clinical. that I think you've got to love having Son in your team, especially when it comes to Watford the week after. So I think you happily keep Son in your team. I think Spurs will do reasonably well in this fixture. I don't think Wolves are the defensive asset that they were under Nuno. So I think that I think we'll see. I think there'll be more goals in this game than expected.
Wow, that's an interesting one, yeah, because I just don't know much about Wolves at the moment. I saw snippets of them against Leicester, but not enough to make any informed decision on them. So yeah, I suppose this is maybe one I should give a watch as well.
They've gone to a high defensive line, and I think for a guy like Son, that's his bread and butter. Getting in behind defense.
Definitely, that's like gold for him. So.
Exactly. So I think that's one to watch. I think we could see Son getting in behind that defense, and it'll also be interesting to see if Kane plays. That whole saga is still ongoing, and at this stage he's still a Spurs player. So maybe we'll see him and Son together against Wolves.
Yeah, and the other interesting option is it's a very, very, very differential option, and obviously not one I'll go for. But Lucas Moura playing in the team like this year, counter-attacking and so on, he could be one for to look out for as well, I suppose.
Yeah, I think him and Bergwijn as well. I think if Kane does go to City, I think those guys will be interesting options to look at because they're both reasonably priced. I think if you don't have Son in your team, there might be a budget option. I think Dele Alli also looked pretty good at 6.5 million.
But playing more box to box almost, not so advanced like he used to play a few years ago when he emerged.
Yeah, I don't think he's the same player, but I think he's on my watch list for sure. And if Kane doesn't come back into the side, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves and how those guys look at the players around Son look. But for me, if you've got Son, he's the number one guy that you want to have, and it's just an easy pick. And if I've got him, I don't really want anyone else from Spurs, to be honest.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I want to talk about Son more, but before I do that, since you mentioned Dele Alli, I remember when he made his debut, it was the season that Leicester won the league. And the reason why I knew about him is that, remember, he was very close to joining Liverpool just before that. And so I kind of looked out for him, and then he was priced at so ridiculously, like at 5 million or whatever, and I was one of his early adopters. So that's a bit of a humble brag from my side. I was onto him so quickly. He did really well that season.
Yeah,
I think
he was great that season.
Yeah, I think he rose in price about 1 million or something like that. It was absolutely insane. So yeah, that was awesome. But now, again, I keep on mentioning these left field captaincy picks. I've mentioned, Mahrez at Man City, which maybe is not that left field. And then I've also I've thrown in Danny Ings at, against Newcastle. But what about Son at Wolves? If you really want to be different, do you think he could ever become an option? Like, let's say if hypothetically you don't have, Salah or Bruno in your team, do you think that Son could be an option against Wolves?
I think my honest opinion would be wait 1 week. I think he is by far the best option for game week 3. I wouldn't necessarily choose him for game week 2. I think I would rather go for a Villa player, a Liverpool player, City player, United player, all before I'd go with Son for game week 2.
Now, Wolves have been one of those teams that kind of have flown under the radar because maybe last season they didn't do so well. And then we're just not sure about their players anymore. Players like Neto, they have some good games here and there, and he's injured now anyway. Daniel Podence looked really good in the eye test, but he just didn't produce the numbers, right? Where are they ranking it? Now I know they have the fixture swing coming up soon, but at the moment, in terms of the next 6 fixtures and so on, based on your model, where are they at both attacking and defensive?
Yeah, so Wolves have jumped both attacking wise and defensive wise. I think attacking wise they're into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think they're into 9th place, just below Arsenal. So I think their fixture outlook is certainly getting better, and defensively they're up to 4th. But got to remember that it's all about timing the transfer for these guys as well.
Sure.
So I think for me, I think the timing that you really want is Wolves players in game week 4. If you start to look for Wolves, bringing Wolves guys in around their Watford fixture, I think that's certainly the way to go. And I think if I have a look here, from game week 4, attacking wise, Wolves are all the way up to 11th, and defensive wise, they are all the way up to 6th. So I think Wolves' assets are, I think I've got Watford, Brentford, Southampton, Newcastle, and then Aston Villa, Leeds. So they're definitely on the watch list in terms of options. I think if they show that they have some sort of defensive soundness and possibly, like we spoke about Jimenez in terms of attack, I think maybe bringing a Wolves player or two in could be quite interesting.
Yeah, is there any defensive players that you're looking at there specifically? I know people are looking at Ait Nouri, who's almost like a left wing back type of player. I don't even know if he even played on the weekend, but is there anybody like somebody like Conor Cody or someone like that who you'd consider bringing into? Well, I know we spoke about the fact that we're not really interested in defensive transfers at the moment, but out of the defensive players, which one is most attractive to you?
I think you just got to look over the next 3 weeks and see which guys are nailed on. I think that's the most important thing. I think Cody at 4.5 million, the most nailed on, is probably going to be the option defensively. Ait Nouri, if his minutes are consistent, then he might become an option. But we've got Spurs this week, we've got United next week. I don't think right now any of the Wolves players are really in our thoughts. I think game week 4 we start to think about, let's look and see what their minutes have been like, and possibly bring some of them in.
Yeah, awesome, man. So now there's a nice fixture to look at. Arsenal versus Chelsea. Now, at the moment, it just seems all doom and gloom at Arsenal. Like, there's rumors going around, and look, I don't want to be spreading COVID rumors because that can be quite cruel, but there's just a lot of injury enforcements, or for some reason or another. Like, if you looked at that team against Brentford, it felt almost like a second string team. You had Saka on the bench as well.
Yeah, I think, Arsenal were missing Aubameyang, they were missing Lacazette. They seem like a very unhappy camp at the moment. I had a lot of plans to bring in Arsenal attackers from game week 4. I was looking at Pepe, possibly Lacazette. I've got Ben White already on my bench. It's looking a bit dire at the moment. I think it'd be nice to see them back at full strength, hopefully with Aubameyang and Lacazette back, and Saka playing. And I think we've got to sort of assess them over this week and next week before we make those calls, because if they don't get any better, then I'm definitely scrapping any Arsenal plans going forward. But their fixtures are improving rapidly, and from game week 4 they're 5th in the attack list, and I think 2nd in the defense list. No, it's actually gone down to 4th now with the updated numbers from the weekend. But even so, if they show that was a once off bad game, and they're actually looking a bit stronger, then I think we can start to reconsider them. But at the moment, it's a wait and see, I think.
Yeah, I think where the issue comes in with, especially somebody like Aubameyang, he's such a good finisher, but last season he kind of played out of position a little bit, and he's a bit expensive. And I mean, even Lacazette is fairly expensive as well. So you really, if you want options, you're looking at someone like Saka and so on, and then you need to factor in, will he play every game? And
I think Saka and Pepe were looking like the best options for me. I think Pepe, the second half of the season, Pepe's numbers were actually fantastic.
He was much improved.
Yeah, so I think if we start to see signs of that, then I think he becomes an option and Saka becomes an option. Smith Rowe is a budget option, but I don't think the numbers are quite there to warrant bringing him in at this stage. So I think, like I said, I think just keep them on the radar. I think if they do show that over the next couple of weeks that the Brentford fixture was just a sort of team in disarray and things are getting back to normal, then there might become options again.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think we've already spoken about Chelsea as well. Not good fixtures in the immediate term, but it improves rapidly. I think after game week 7, game week 8.
Yeah, I think game week 7 for Chelsea is the real week to target. I mean their fixtures are just gold from then onwards. And we've got Lukaku now as an option. I think I've certainly got a plan to try and bring Lukaku in for game week 7. And for sure one of the defenders. And the nice thing is we've got 6 weeks to see what their defensive rotation looks like.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have enough of a sample size by then to determine whether we go with somebody like Reece James or Spilicueta, or
Chilwell.
Yeah, or just go for a safe option like Rudiger or someone like that over there.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, Chilwell and James look like the juicy options. It's just a question of whether they are getting that consistent game time. I really hope that Reece James manages to nail his position, because I think from an attacking output wise, I think at 5.5 he could be the real bargain of the season.
Yeah, and when he plays, he seems to be a bonus point magnet as well. If Chelsea keep a clean sheet, because he makes so much of the attacking output as well. So that's I agree with you there. That's definitely one of the players on my watch list as well. And then the last fixture, West Ham versus Leicester. Now, West Ham, crazy in defense at the moment. This could be quite a cracking fixture as well, because didn't this fixture end up, I think West Ham beat Leicester like 3-2 or something like that. The Lingard scored, I think, and and Iheanacho scored in that game, if I'm not mistaken, as well, towards the back end of last season.
Yeah, I think I think the thing that I'm wary of with this fixture is obviously Benrahma had a fantastic first game, and I think there's a massive bandwagon to bring Benrahma in at the moment, and I think Leicester is going to be a different opposition. They've got a very solid defense. Brendan Rodgers is a very good manager, so I think it's going to be interesting to see how the West Ham attackers perform against a team that's set up a lot better than a Newcastle defense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was something I'm wary of. Like, I don't have an issue with maybe having one of Benrahma, one of Antonio, but I think now jumping onto the bandwagon and doubling up when they're about to play Leicester, I think is really short-sighted. I think maybe just waiting that one more week before you can make that type of change would have been worth it. But yeah, no, I get you there. I think Leicester, they've been so great, so consistent over the last few years. And as far as Leicester are concerned now, obviously a lot of people jumped onto Iheanacho for 7.5. He never started.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I had him in every single one of my drafts up until a week before kickoff, basically, and it was actually up until the Community Shield, because his stats were just phenomenal. He played so well last season, and then it just the rumours started going around that he's not going to be nailed on, and then he didn't play Community Shield, and then I just went, he's just too much of a risk. It doesn't look like he's going to start, and I took him out. If he was nailed on stats wise, he is the guy to have. I mean, he would be straight into my team, but it just doesn't look like he's going to get the consistent minutes at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. And also, look, I suppose Patson Daka is new to the league, so I doubt he'll be thrown in, that regularly anytime soon. But I think also my concern over Iheanacho is that I just wasn't sure whether he's going through one of the biggest purple patches we've seen, and whether this is actually sustainable. But I think that's being unfair on him, because he looked a talent when he was at City as well. So I don't want to be unfair on him, but yeah, now the rotation risk has become a problem. So
I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I mean, people say in FPL there's an old saying that form is greater than class. And that, I mean, it's so true in the short term, because we deal with such short term decisions in FPL. that if, but I think that the key caveat to that argument is that you have to have a player that's nailed on. So I mean, I would be picking him, like I said, every day of the week if I knew he was playing 90 minutes. As soon as a player is not nailed on, I think they become a massive FPL risk, and it's just better to go with the guys that are nailed on and in form. And sometimes you get both. A guy like Bruno.
Yeah, awesome, man. So, can you predict, if you had to pick out one fixture where you think there's going to be a surprise result over there, which one did you pick out?
In terms of a weaker team winning, or in terms of just a goal fest?
Either one.
Like I said before, I think the Villa and Newcastle fixture, I think we're going to see some crazy score lines in that one. So I think if you've got attacking players from those two teams, I think that's gold. And other than that, I don't expect too much. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Brentford do against Palace, just from coming off the Arsenal win. I think they might disappoint a few people, personally. And then I was saying to a friend of mine in the office today. He was saying, I want to bring in a Chelsea defender, and I was saying, but their fixtures aren't so great in the next 5 weeks. And he said, what are you talking about? They're playing Arsenal. So I think we might see another good result from Chelsea, to be honest. With Arsenal in disarray at the moment. But other than that, I think the standard Liverpool, City, United, I think that's where you're going to see the main goals once again from the usual suspects.
Yeah, awesome, man. So, well, I'm wishing everybody luck for Game Week 2. May it be as good as Game Week 1. And yeah, we'll catch up next week.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Claude.
Cheers, man.